All right. Welcome, everybody, to June. Some say it's summer out there. Still feels like winter to me. It's really cold. But here we are at the meetup. Just a little note I'd point out on there. We got to find a new name. We're moving on from using the meetup platform. And so we need to take meetup out of our name. And so we've created a little, yay. So
Yay, meetup sucks.
That's a suggestion.
Yeah. So we're creating a little contest, and later on in the program, we'll give you the link to submit your idea for what would be a good next name for what is now the Startup Monterey Bay Tech Meetup. But for now, let's move forward to what's next. This is starting to feel really redundant because we've been doing it for over a year now, but we're on Zoom. The important things here, use chat. If you have questions, we'll put your questions out of chat and pose them to the presenters. You can send private messages by selecting just that person who you want to talk to. And please keep your microphone muted, especially those of you with dogs. No names will be mentioned. Just kidding. And we are recording the meeting. So if you don't want to be seen on the recording, please turn off your camera. Let's roll forward. Special thanks to our sponsors, CSU Monterey Bay and Startup Monterey Bay, that's us, and our marketing partner, the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. On to what's next. So welcome. This is a place to network, and in a few short months, we'll be able to get back to networking together in a room. Right now, we're hoping that we can go live in September, or back, we're live now, back person to person in September. We have to follow the university rules, so it's all going to depend on what the university says we can do. We're here to share and learn, find out what's happening. We're going to find out lots about what's happening tonight and build a community of entrepreneurship, because it takes a village to start a company. Absolutely. Have fun, make money, change the world. What's next? Let's start. Let us begin. This is the team, our team. I'm Brad Barbeau. We have Mary Jo Zank. Say hello, Mary Jo. She's just going to wave. Okay. Dan Ripke, it's his daughter's 18th birthday today. So he is appropriately celebrating with her. And we have our intern who organizes this every month and has been doing this now for quite a few months, but has always had class during the actual event. And she is able to join us tonight. There she is. Sitem, say hello.
Hi, I'm Sitem.
And thank you for all your help in getting this organized. And of course, our famous page turner, Lynette Lathrop. Say hi, Lynette.
Everyone, good evening.
And Dr. Jenny Kwan, who is not with us tonight. Okay. We have a poll up there. Where are you zooming in from? And have we closed that? Poll's closed. So there's the results. 10 in from Monterey County, 4 from Santa Cruz County, and 3 from somewhere else. Where's somewhere else? Anybody willing to admit where they're coming in from?
My Zoom session is being run out of a server in Virginia somewhere.
Aha. So you're sending your signal a very long way just to get here, given that you're over in Pebble Beach.
And
I have no
I'm up
comment about my current location.
I'm up in Mendocino County.
Ah, Nathan, good to have you with us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So tonight we're going to hear from DART, the Drones Automation and Robotics Technology And also from Airspace Integration. They got some very cool things that they're doing. And from the California State University, Monterey Bay College of Science, about some very cool marine things going on. So it's a good program tonight. And there's the folks who are going to do it. Josh Metz from Monterey Bay DART, Chris Bly from Monterey Bay DART and Airspace Integration, and Corey Garza, sorry, from CSUMB School of Science, College of Science. Sorry, our error. Okay, let's do brief introductions. If you would just open up chat and say a little about who you are and what you do. This is your chance to let us know all about, well, maybe not all about, but about who you is. Go ahead and type those into chat. We've got Murat Yeltsin, CEO of Urbanic Farm, who did really well in Startup Challenge. Nathan Dorn, CEO of Food Origins and LHF Management. What does LHF stand for, Nathan? If you responded, you're Amy Gross, the sustainability lead for Joby Aviation. Daniel Emerson, Light in Motion. We heard from him last time. Rick Pacetto, been following DART for a while. Cool. Excellent. Low hanging fruit. I like that, Nathan. Sharon Barrington, project manager and high tech contractor. Cool. That's a new people. Smokey Heisey, student assistant for the College of Business. Oh, Smokey, we'll get to know you well in the fall. And secretary for the Entrepreneurship Club. Yay, Smokey, go Entrepreneurship Club. Let's get it rocking. And board of direction. Smokey, you look like one of those people who is shy, retiring, and doesn't get involved in very much of anything at all. He said.
I appreciate the sarcasm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for all that you do. Cool things you're involved in. All right. Cool. So let's roll forward. It is time for the monthly news quiz. Time for MJ to take over and stump the chumps. Mary Jo, it's all yours.
Thank
What do
you,
got
Brad.
for us?
So each month I try to find some interesting news items about entrepreneurs and innovation in the Monterey Bay region. And I put a couple of them into question form and we all try to guess them. So there'll be a poll after each question. Okay, let's try our first question. What local event space will be providing state-of-the-art studio space for both virtual and hybrid events? This is a pretty cool space now that'll be available. Pebble Beach, Monterey Conference Center, CSUMB at Salinas City Center, or Cruzio Workspace. Okay. Wait a couple more seconds. Anybody else want to guess?
We got quite a variety of responses.
We
showing.
do. We do. Okay, let's close the poll. And the majority says Monterey Conference Center, but it's pretty close. Pretty close. So let's see what the answer is. It is the Monterey Conference Center. So they are going to have this really cool space available for doing kind of virtual events, but they'll have space for like 80 people live. So it'll be a real good opportunity to do hybrid events. So we're really looking forward to it. The company that they're getting the equipment from is from Canada. So the equipment is here, but their staff can't leave Canada to install it. So hopefully within a couple of weeks, they'll be able to come down and install it. But I believe it'll be available through next May. So keep that in mind. Pretty cool.
It is very cool. This is one of just a very small number of demonstration rooms that are being set up around the country. I can't remember how many there are, but it's a small single digit number. So it's very cool that Monterey has been selected for this.
We're going to check it out and maybe run one of our events there.
Or maybe even two.
Okay, next question. Which previous Startup Challenge winner was recently awarded a $1 million National Science Foundation Business Innovation Research Phase 2 grant? A whole $1 million. Aether Bio, InfiniRel, or Cruise Foam? I should probably get that Jeopardy music for these questions, huh?
Yeah, I think we need the ticker or something.
People stopped guessing. Looks like it. All right, let's end the poll. And it looks like Cruise Foam is the favorite. And the answer is Cruise Foam. Good job, guys. Okay, one more question. Which local college or university had several student winners among the 2021 Startup Challenge winners? And the options are basically all of the colleges and universities here. Cabrillo, CSUMB, Gavilan College, Hartnell College, Monterey Peninsula College, or UC Santa Cruz. Has this stumped everybody?
Yeah, we've got 10 folks who've jumped in here.
All right, let's call it. Okay, so the favorite is CSUMB and the second favorite is UCSC. So let's see, the winner is CSUMB. And we actually had 3 companies, Connections, which was a social venture runner-up, Ironwood Makerspace, which was this year's student division winner, and Segura Enterprise, which was one of the venture runners-up. So quite a showing from students this year. Okay, and I just want to make a, can you go to the next slide, Lynette? And we just want to say farewell and happy retirement to Sarah Eisenberg. She's been running Santa Cruz Tech Beat for a couple of years now, and she is going on to fun retirement stuff. So she's still going to be living in the Santa Cruz area, and we're looking forward to seeing her at some of our events, and we're really excited for her. But Santa Cruz Tech Beat has really made a significant difference in this community, and she will definitely be missed in that. Her work there will be missed. It's not going
So
on.
what's happened? So Tech Beat's done?
It'll be done, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to make sure that function gets fulfilled. Santa Cruz Works has been doing a lot of reporting. We've been doing much more reporting, and we'll be expanding our efforts. And there's another new publication in Santa Cruz Looker, that's doing some of this news. So that reporting is really important to the region.
So, she had a business model that may not transform into other places. The university couldn't sort of pick up on her business model, for example, I don't think.
It would be difficult. Yeah. Santa Cruz Works might be able to. They may be in a better position too. But we'll see. This is relatively new news. We just found out a couple of weeks ago, so haven't had much of a chance to figure out how to respond. But we really appreciate the work that she's done. She was the founder. She built this from scratch over a period of, I'm not sure exactly, somewhere 6 or 8 years she's been doing this.
Right.
And has done a great job.
So,
All right.
yeah, I believe she said her website will still be available for like finding stuff and archival things. So that's still being maintained and hosted, so people can still access previous articles and things. But there won't be anything new, and I don't know her official retirement date yet.
Cool. All right. So be in the know. For as long as it's around, read Santa Cruz Tech Beat. Also, our website, startupmontereybay.com. We feature news stories on our homepage, and santacruzworks.org is carrying more and more news of companies and goings on in the region relative to entrepreneurship. So let's go next. Startup Launchpad, Monterey Bay. If you've got a startup or you're thinking about starting a startup, reach out to us. We can help. That's our job through Launchpad Advise for drop-in advising. If you have a question or an issue to deal with, if you're looking for ongoing mentoring, you can apply to our mentor program. And we also run a specialty foods industry founders roundtable. So if you're in the specialty foods industry, anywhere between farm and table, so anywhere in the supply chain for the specialty foods industry, reach out to us and join the founders roundtable. And on to next, getvirtual.org, really cool project started in Santa Cruz. Run now by, there's students at Santa Cruz, students at CSUMB, and students at several other universities that help businesses, small businesses that have been affected by COVID-19, which is pretty much most small businesses, help them get their website up and running, get connected to online payments, and get themselves into the virtual world. So if you know of any businesses who are in need of help, send them to getvirtual.org and we'll find help for them. Okay. Upcoming events. What do we got? Fun stuff. The next meeting of the Monterey Bay Specialty Foods Industry Founders Roundtable will be Tuesday, June 22nd. I think that's about 2 weeks out. That afternoon, if you're interested, there's an address down there, tinyurl.com/June Roundtable to say you'd like to come. What's next? Drone Camp. Chris or Josh, you want to say do a little blurb for Drone Camp? I know you're going to talk more about it later.
Yeah, we're going to cover this a little bit later as well. This is a collaboration between CSU, UC, UC Ag and Natural Resource Division and industry partners, and we brought it here to Monterey now 2-3 years ago, I believe, and it's gone virtual during the pandemic. This one will be wholly online, and will likely be coming back, physically in the future. But you can learn more. Registration is open at dronecampca.org, and we'll put it in more context during our talk.
Cool. Excellent. What else do we have? Oh, we have the Startup Investment and Community Capital Expo. This will be year 5 for the Expo. We had over 500 registrants for the Expo last year. We had 20 companies present. We had about 6 different panels on crowdfunding and inclusiveness in the funding process. This year's will be on Thursday, September 23rd. Almost certainly it will be a hybrid event. It will be available to attend in person, and we'll also put it out over the internet. So if you're interested, sign up at tinyurl.com/iiED newsletter to stay in the know. The website siccmonterey.com that's a live site, but it is going to go through a pretty big transformation over the next week as it gets up for 2021, and will be open for companies to apply to present by July 1st. So get in line. It's a great place to present to investors. This is, as its name implies, a funding event for companies that are out there looking for funding. Both companies that are intended to scale, the venture companies, and also smaller businesses, the community capital, because we believe that supporting those businesses that form the backbone of our community are important also. All right, Thursday, September 23rd. Okay, we're coming up on our presentations here. So just a note, if you got a question, pop it into chat. We will address it when we get a chance, and that way your question doesn't get lost. One of the great advantages of Zoom. And our presenters tonight, we're going to have Josh Metz, Chris Bly, and Corey Garza. And let's begin with Josh Metz, really the founder or co-founder, I guess, with Chris Bly, of the Drones Automation and Robotics Technology Initiative, which has turned into an ongoing organization, helps to organize Drone Camp, and helps to organize, actually puts on the annual DART Symposium. And so, Josh, tell us what's happening in the world of drones.
Thanks, Brad. Nice to see everybody again. I'm gonna run my little slideshow here. There's a number of folks here on the call that I recognize, so it's nice to at least see people's names again. Sometime not too far, maybe we'll be gathering together again, but yeah, so the DART initiative was formed a few years ago and has persisted even at a slow burn rate over the pandemic, although there's some really great advances happening. And in this case, we get to herald the work of others who are really, I think, leading the way in the region. And really our goal is, and has been, as a regional economic development strategy, to align industry, academia, and government towards what we're describing as future growth sectors. So all these technologies are really cool and interesting and have broad potential and real application. And we say, why not Monterey Bay as a center, a global center of business innovation, tech innovation with these related technologies. So we talk about, applications in public safety, We talk about applications in energy and infrastructure, public safety response, farming, all these pictures. This is a real company working in the Salinas Valley. This is a weeding robot, FarmWise. This is a autonomous vehicle developed at Imagery that dangles sensors down into the water column and then transmits them up to this platform and then to satellites to communicate oceanographic data. And then, of course, our local hero company, Joby Aviation. I saw this really cool picture. I just happened to save it. Someone took recently of the night sky over their aircraft. So we're talking about the technologies, but it's really oriented towards the people, the workforce, the skilled workforce, the people coming out of the universities and the technical education programs that exist and ones that we are hoping to strengthen. So it's the potential of these technologies to be a benefit to society that is really exciting. We're also kind of making a distinction here between those who are the tinkerers, the builders, the engineering types, and maybe those who are the application folks who like to take the technology and apply it to a real problem in the world. And of course, there's a large, complex ecosystem in which all of this needs to operate safely and effectively and really see these applications develop, whether it's farming, forest fire prevention and response, package delivery, mapping, all kinds of applications. So really an exciting space, and we continue to be hopeful that it will bring some of these benefits to the community here in the Monterey Bay and broadly. These are some numbers that talk about the projected scale of the marketplace just really for drones. And this is, you know, there's all kinds of ways this can be sliced up, but it's one view that was put out in a great piece, The Future of the Drone Economy by Levitate Capital that came out last year. Some strong growth projected, and in areas that you know, are relevant to our region, including national defense, of course, but also enterprise and also acknowledging that, you know, we're well positioned here on the West Coast for big expansion around the Pacific Rim. So these are some key points. Here's a little bit of the history of where we came from. Initially, there was a couple of us here on the call, Chris Bly, myself, and some other representatives from local companies who got together and responded to a FAA program for establishing a drone integration test and development site in at the Marina Airport. While we were not successful in gaining that designation, we did establish a community of interest and coalition of action, and we heard from the FAA, you know, continue on this path because the future of aviation is quite dynamic and there's lots of potential there. So the DART initiative then came back and sort of became a larger umbrella idea linking our major universities, UC Santa Cruz, CSUMB, the Naval Postgraduate School, along with private companies like Aerospace Integration and Joby and some of our regional agencies, cities and public agencies. So the goal is to grow, you know, a regional cluster here and to be part of a national and international network. So our board, these are our current board members. Amy Gross, who's here with us, she's the sustainability manager with Joby. Andrea Pesci is the industry alliances and licensing director at UC Santa Cruz. And of course, Brad, who serves currently as the president of the board. Chris Bly, myself, and Michael Matkin, who is our newest best board member, and he brings an affiliation with multi-campus UC institute called Citrus, which has a long name, but basically has to do with computers and information technology for the benefit of society. here's our vision statement and our kind of concept of aligning industry, government, and academia towards a common vision, and really about bringing together, fostering coordination, and pursuing opportunities for regional advancement, innovation, and economic development. What we have focused on for our mission is really dealing with these questions of automation and autonomy, robotics technology development, testing, and manufacturing. And I think that's exemplified by Joby, Parallel Flights, and other companies that are developing in the region. DART is focused on convening stakeholders and connecting parties of interest, identifying, pursuing, and securing public and private funding, hosting educational and industry events, and advocating for safe and appropriate market and facilities access. So Brad mentioned that we have this symposium that we put on the first year in 2019. We tried a couple times last year. First it was the pandemic, and then the fires that caused us to simply push it out to this year. So we're working actively on pulling this event together for October 19th through the 21st. We're going to do our own version of a hybrid event where we have morning sessions from 9 to 12 that'll feature speakers that are present locally and from around the different parts of the country. And then we will have a 2-hour break then from 2 to 5 p.m. each day. One of these days we will gather at 3 different locations around the bay. So the first will be the Naval Postgraduate School's Autonomy Testing and Development Center called the Slammer. It's right down just on the outskirts of the city of Monterey on the beach. The second day will be at CSUMB, which is out there in Marina, right adjacent to the Marina Airport. And if we're lucky, we'll be having, among other things, presentations from leadership of both CSU and UC, as well as touring opportunities with our friends at Joby. And then finally, day 3 will convene here at this location in this picture, which is called, it's the home of aerospace integration. It's right on the shore of the Monterey Bay in La Selva Beach. There's a number of really cool things happening down there, and we're going to talk some about that tonight. But that's what to look forward to in October. So part of what we've done as an organization is establish partnerships. These are 2 of them shown here. Of course, being here and working with Brad and the Startup Monterey Bay team is one of our lasting accomplishments in a partnership. We've continued to do these meetups collaboratively now for a couple years. So this is a great partnership. We also have, as we mentioned before, have this active partnership with UC Ag and Natural Resource Division and a number of other entities in the UC system and the CSU system to bring together this drone camp. And last year, I think, it was moved online in the prior year when we did in-person training out here at the Fort Ord Natural Reserve. That's the picture here. We had, I think it was 75 participants. We went online and we ended up with 340 participants from all around the country and some outside the country. So the registration has just opened for this year's event. And if you know folks who are within your networks or on your teams, this is, if you check out the website, there's just incredible talent that's involved in providing these trainings. Corey Garza, who's here, is one of the instructors. I mean, you're getting like top-notch drone flight planning, data analysis, and other real valuable skills from these folks in an intensive format. Here's our friends at Joby. We've been actively advocating and supporting their planned build out of this 600,000 square foot manufacturing facility for their eVTOL aircraft. This is something that we continue to cheerlead for, and whenever we can, we stand up to advocate for the growth of this company, which is going to be a catalyst for other companies and suppliers and other great stuff to happen. One of the things we're currently working on is advancing partnerships and concepts for this a manufacturing career pathway program that would really aim to upskill local labor force to meet their planned manufacturing needs, and in partnership with local colleges and also supported by a private foundation. So this is a really exciting thing. We'll report back on that as it comes more into focus. I mentioned airspace integration. Chris Bly's here, and he's going to talk all about his activity. This is a view down the airfield. There's a grass airstrip there. So if you're a pilot, you can go to airspaceintegration.com and download Chris's landing forms and pay his minor fees. And you can fly in here on the days they're open and check out the scene. It's pretty cool. Lots of different stuff happening around there, including a partnership that grew out of one of our earlier meetups, where we connected with the Naval Research Lab. This really great scientist they have, Jerry Schmidt there. He's become Chris Bly's newest best friend. They go around and talk about the weather, because Jerry's a meteorologist, and he brought in this super high power Doppler radar system, all these other sciencey things, and they come up with all this really cool data that tells you what the clouds are doing at very micro scales. And so this is a view looking from where this station is now set up, and that's really catalyzing all kinds of interest and other partnerships that are following from that. And Chris is going to touch on that a little bit in his talk. Other partnerships we have, of course, this is our friends at the Naval Postgraduate School. They have a couple programs that are accessible to entrepreneurs and private sector, including this cruiser consortium. They have regular kind of convenings that folks can get access to, the Joint Interagency Field Experimentation. And this is a great opportunity to test and develop technologies and also get it in front of potential customers and public agencies. And then this is the Slammer facility down on the Monterey Bay, where they're developing aerial, underwater, and underground testing for autonomous vehicles. Finally, I'll just mention a new project that we're starting up with the support of the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, which is exploring career pathways for drone technology related use for forest industry, forest health, fuel load monitoring, replanting, all kinds of issues related to forest health and fire prevention. So we have kind of an active line of work going on in that area. So that's kind of an overview of where we are, and I would encourage you to check out these websites for more information. And if you have interest or those in your network, the drone camp is actively being registered, and keep an eye out for when we open up registration for the DART Symposium in October. And I know there's a lot of folks here who might be able to weigh in addition, but I'd happily take questions. Let me check the chat, see if there's anything going on here. Just some, how do we sign up for the DART Symposium? Yeah, so good question. Currently, registration is not open. So the main thing would be to register. I think we have a newsletter kind of sign up form on our homepage, and if we'll then be kind of using our mailing list to send out notices, and of course partnering with Startup Monterey Bay and others who have mailing lists as well. So we'll be probably begin doing that later this summer. And yeah, so the good news is with the virtual format, people can Zoom in from anywhere, and those who are lucky enough to be local can join us to see demonstrations and actually see people and talk and network and stuff like that in person. So I would next say probably hand back the screen, I think, to Lynette, who's going to set it up for Chris, who's the next guy to talk. And you all may well know Chris. He and I have been working on this activity now for 3-4 years. And so Chris, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Josh. That was a really awesome background overview and future look at Monterey Bay Dart. So definitely appreciate that. So Chris Bly with Airspace Integration. Josh mentioned it a couple of times there. So we really have a focus on various drone technologies, but also manned too, as we have a grass landing field on our facility. So next slide. So kind of the use of drones is continuing to increase, and I keep seeing more and more applications of ways that people can use drones in various ways. Different sensors are coming on the market. They're being miniaturized so they can go on drones. Even manned aircraft, traditional manned aircraft is being reconfigured to be unmanned as well. So there's some of these legacy manned aircraft manufacturers that are seeing the value in their platform. If you take the pilot out of the cockpit and build it out so it can fly unmanned, and then you can use all that extra weight to carry that you're taking away from the pilot being in there, and you can fuel it. So you can get longer durations. So that's interesting. Forward momentum in kind of another area. So we can fly farther afield beyond visual line of sight. So this just gives you an idea of where the drone market is going. Next slide. And then I came across this problem just doing my work in Santa Cruz and wanting to fly drones, is that I had to find somewhat guerrilla places to go fly my drone, so I wouldn't fly over people's houses and kind of take a risk of having it fall out of the sky and land on somebody's head. So the location thing is quite a challenge, and particularly in the Silicon Valley, where there's a lot of people. It's a high density of people, and then the air traffic is very complicated. So finding a place to do and testing and research and development can be challenging. And then also the talent pool, the venture capital, and where we're located just south of these places, further north in Silicon Valley, I feel makes the Monterey Bay region pretty much ideal for doing drone innovations. And one of them, we're also working with the University of Alaska at Fairbanks to come up with the ability to fly beyond visual line of sight. And from where we're located, that's really possible because we can just immediately fly over the Monterey Bay without having to fly over anybody's head. And then even further out, we can get in totally uncontrolled airspace. So there's some virtues of being in the area that we're at. Next slide. And then the education institutions are really ideal just in this general area. So from University of California, Santa Cruz, Cal State University, Monterey Bay, to the Naval Postgraduate School, kind of it's a crescent of quality institutions, but also the workforce that is in this area too, with the proper training, can really be geared up for doing very unique things in manufacturing, but also data science. So I'm really excited about that part as well. Next slide. So this is where we're located. For those of you that don't know where it is, it's pretty much a rectangle that on the east side is San Andreas Road, and then on the west side is the Monterey Bay. And we're pretty much right between Manresa State Beach and Sunset State Beach. And so this campus has the background of being a military institution. It was the coastal defense back in World War II. And they're actually still the foundations of some artillery guns, and they use the airstrip to fly targets out in the bay, and then they practice shooting those targets. So that's the reason for the airstrip. And then after the war was over, the World War II was over, the Seventh-day Adventist purchased the property for quite a deal of $1, and created a high school boarding school there, but also had commercial properties or commercial companies locate there for giving students some experience in working at these industries. So we're one of those companies. There's also Calfee Design that does carbon fiber bicycles that's located there, and a handful of other companies. So the airfield is about 2,200 feet, and a lot of bush planes fly in there, and I've gotten to know the manned aircraft world a little better. There's a type of flying called STOL, which is an abbreviation for short takeoff and landing. And so some of these planes only need a couple hundred feet to land and take off. Pretty phenomenal to see this. And then also, as Josh mentioned, this connection with the Naval Research Lab and the installation of this weather field test site that is a really unique new component to the property. Next slide. So one of the things we did recently is with a drone platform. It's manufactured by a German manufacturer called Quantum Systems, and it's called the F90 Plus. And so it has the ability to take off vertically and then transition into forward flight. We received a COA, which is Certificate of Authorization from the FAA to fly beyond visual line of sight. But in doing so, we also had to have a manned aircraft having their eyes on it to be able to do this out beyond visual line of sight work. But also on the craft, we also have ADS-B out, which is a form of transmission that most manned aircraft have, is also on this drone. So we can see actually where it is, even though we don't have telemetry to it from the ground. And so, so these are just some pictures of this this demonstration that we gave to Monterey Fire and Santa Cruz Fire in conjunction with the Naval Postgraduate School from the facility at Airspace Integration at the Monterey Bay Academy. So next slide. So this is the corridor that we flew. So this is the flight programming software that is used to program where the drone goes. So pretty much we drew a polygon off the coast there in front of the Manresa State Beach, and then where we wanted to land and take off. And so that's designated down where our office is at the Monterey Bay Academy. So we flew, and it just kind of, leaves your sight and does this lawnmower pattern back and forth. And this particular platform takes high resolution imagery that is collected on a card on board. And then when it's finished with its flight, it returns back home and then transitions and then lands. And so this is the flight programming software that's used to do this mission. So is the I was going to show a video really quick. So if that could be queued up, please.
Yep.
So this is at Camp Roberts, actually. So you can see how the propellers are facing upwards, and it'll take off like a multi-rotor. And it it goes to a designated altitude, and then the propellers move forward. So then it has forward flight and flies off beyond visual line of sight, where we really have no communication with it, with the base station on the ground. So the whole flight program is uploaded into it, first of all. So it kind of has its marching orders for the most part and knows where to go and what to do. And it's a little bit of a leap of faith, but you know, within half an hour, all of a sudden you get the telemetry back to the base station and you know that it accomplished its mission. So yeah, that's the part on the drone work that we're doing, but it ties in with really well with what I'm going to be talking about next with the Naval Research Laboratories weather test site. So this is a picture looking out over the Monterey Bay from our facility. This is a shipping container with a Ka band radar on top. And then below are other instrumentation, wind speed indicators, and LiDAR. And this Ka band radar has ability to see the cloud structure and contents within the cloud. And then next slide. And this is some of the imagery that comes off of this, looking at the size of the particles within the clouds and the structures behind them. And we're able to, this radar is on a gimbal, so you can point it all the way down to the coast and off into the horizon. And the goal and things we're going to use it for is correlating what we see on the ground and then tie that in together with using the drone that I showed you before to go out on the coast several miles or out over the Monterey Bay to collect other information like temperature and humidity and other sensors that we can put on the drone. So it's seeing things out for real time out there and then comparing those with what we're seeing from the land. And so, yeah, really interesting pursuits in working with the Naval Research Lab, and would have likely that connection wouldn't have been made if it wasn't for the meetups that Monterey Bay DART put on. So next slide. And just some of the partners that we're working with. Embari is involved, in Citrus, as Josh mentioned before, Naval Research Lab. Parallel Flight is one of the incubator companies that we have on site, and Naval Postgraduate School. So next slide, and happy to take any questions or take them later. Thank you.
Chris, there was a question about the resolution of the imagery, and I just jumped in and made a comment about the platform being able to carry a wide range of different sensors, and I don't know if you had more to add to that.
Yeah, so the camera that we've mainly been flying with is a 42 megapixel Sony camera, so it's a full frame camera, and so we're getting 2 centimeter resolution, and so that's the resolution with RGB, but it also can fly with multi-spec sensors, so the whole MicaSense suite, so that's the Altum and the Red Edge MX, and also the blue. So there's a dual sensor with MicaSense that goes within the payload bay. But they have like their standards, and also, yeah, in saying that too, they also have LiDAR now too. So that's a new sensor for this drone platform. So using lasers the ability of using LiDAR over tree canopies comes in that you get a second return. So you're actually seeing the ground surface and not just the tree canopy.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Well done. That's very, very cool and important facility that you've got going out there, making lots of things happen. So our third presenter tonight is Professor Corey Garza of the CSUMB College of Science, who will tell us about the work that he's been doing in marine science and in the drone world. Corey, welcome.
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me. Evening, everyone. So I'm Corey Garza, a professor in the Marine Science Department at CSUMB. And so today I'm going to talk to you about a drone program we've established through the NOAA National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. It's one of their what they call cooperative science centers. So we're one of 4 national research and education centers in the US, and we're the NOAA Center for Coast and Marine Ecosystems. And so our campus anchors the West Coast part of that. But as part of the funding we received to be in the center, we've developed a coastal drone program. And I think it's one of the only marine drone programs at an academic institution on the US West Coast. Next slide, please. So just to give you some background, where we're going with drones. And so this is a really sort of a fun to read paper if you like to read science journal articles, but it's by Kintich, who's an oceanographer down at Scripps. And it's a summary of a meeting that was held back in 2012 between the National Science Foundation, NOAA, and the National Academy of the Sciences. And it was trying to envision what the next generation ocean science workforce should look like. And so it was titled the 21st Century Ocean Scientist Report. And in large part where it was coming from is it had to do with dealing with the US's oceanographic fleet, which is really expensive to run. So they look really cool on TV if you see those big ships out there. But they can cost, $30,000 to $50,000 a day to run, and the research budgets in the U.S. couldn't keep up with it. And so one of the major recommendations of this paper was that the U.S. workforce, ocean science workforce, had to move towards integrating more autonomous technologies to collect data that at one point were collected by hand, pretty labor-intensive approaches. And so this paper does a really great job of summarizing that. In fact, this is, I think, Oregon State's glider program. So gliders are another type of autonomous technology that can perform the same functions as a large US oceanographic research vessel. Next slide, please. And so what I like to tell, a lot of my colleagues in the marine science world to get worried about this, I get it, but, automation is coming. And, I work in the marine ecology world, to the world of kelp forests and tide pools and marshes. And so what I've started to do over the last 4 years is really start to look at how we start to apply aerial drones to improving the way that we collect data in the coastal environment, but also how do we start to train students around these next generation technologies that they're actually going to need if they want to enter the ocean science workforce. So next slide, please. So just what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today are the NOAA supported drone operations that we have at CSUMB. And the particulars of our funding require that 50% of our funding goes towards basic and applied research, which I'll talk about a little bit today, but also training. And so the way that NOAA looks at this program, it's not just a program to build research capacity at our institution. They also view this as a workforce development program. And so in large part, what we're doing with this program, it's training students in the technologies and approaches that NOAA will be looking for in their next generation workforce. Next slide, please. And so our particular center, what we partly do is we actually align a lot of what we do with NOAA's new research and technology focus area. So they released this actually in late 2020, but they got overlooked a little bit, as you might imagine, things that were going on. But the new technology areas that NOAA is actually really focusing on are as follows: AI and machine learning. What NOAA refers to, they call them now uncrewed systems. And when this came out, it was unmanned. They've actually changed this to uncrewed systems to support advanced mapping and monitoring of coastal resources. Also cloud technology as well, and big data analysis. And in fact, we were actually recently approved for another 5-year renewal. I actually got to turn on in that paperwork next week to get that up and running. And in the latest iteration of the center, they're actually going to have us to continue to emphasize drone technologies, but also to build upon that as well to support these new research areas that NOAA is focusing on. Next slide, please. And so, one of the some of the reasons that, we're engaging in drone-based research is that it really does, these drones, they really extend the amount of spatial coverage we have, but also the temporal coverage. One of the challenges in the way that we do sort of current monitoring marine systems is that they actually rely on pretty labor-intensive manual methods. Scuba diving is a classic example. It looks great, but you can only stay underwater for so long, and you can only swim so far. I do a lot of work around tide pools, and they're actually sort of a real sort of classic monitoring habitat. But again, it's pretty labor intensive to survey in there, usually crawling around on your hands and knees, counting things, one at a time. And it can take you, 3 or 4 hours, to count everything along a 20-meter stretch of shoreline. The drones are, collecting this information in about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the amount of space that we want to cover. We can actually really easily replicate, these surveys in space, which is really nice. A lot of these systems have GPS units, and you can actually replicate where you're collecting the data, plus or minus, a few centimeters in this case. And you kind of need that type of precision if you're trying to monitor change in a system. And then the other thing, and this is kind of a little bit of a sore point, with a lot of my colleagues is, a lot of these survey teams historically, you're sending out teams of 5 to 10 people to collect these data. And as you're seeing in these pictures, it's pretty much one person now collecting the same amount of data that, a large survey team might have collected in the past. But one of the harsh realities of granting agencies is that they just aren't going to fund you anymore to support teams of 5 to 10 field technicians to collect this data. And so, if we don't do this on our own, the funding agencies are going to force us to change the approaches that we use to sort of conduct research in the coastal environment. Next slide, please. And so I just kind of want to review sort of what our basic infrastructure is here. And so I started building this out about 4 years ago, and the way that our drone program is structured, it's structured to use a number of different drones to serve a bunch of different types of needs that we have relative to the coastal environment. And so what you're looking at here are a couple of the drones that we use here. They're off-the-shelf DJI drones. The one on the left there, it's the Mavic 2 Pro. You can actually get one at Best Buy. We just tend to order ours online. This actually tends to be the workhorse for our particular fleet here. And we use this a lot for rocking or tide pool monitoring. There's massive sort of monitoring programs on the US West Coast that focus on the rocky shore environment. But we've started to use these drones here to do a lot of this work. In fact, we're actually working down at Hopkins Marine Station on Monday to go survey a really famous transect line there called the Hewitt Line. It's actually been used a number of papers to look at effects of climate change. We've now been sort of asked to go out there and start to use the drones to do this. It's a real stable platform. We've actually got it so now it can fly just 1 to 2 meters autonomously above the ground. This was actually a big breakthrough for us in the last month or so, because prior, some of the software packages we were using, you can only fly down to a height of about 10 meters above the ground. And so we didn't get the greatest resolution because we're trying to count things like barnacles and other small animals on the ground. So now we have a way to do this. The other drone that we use, we got a ton of these now. I think we just got something. Chris just procured a couple for us. It's the DJI Phantom. This was kind of the classic drone that was introduced into the US market. This is one of our older drones. We call it Panularis. It was the first drone we ever had. And so it's actually, we tend to use these for sort of mid-altitude habitat surveys, about 40 to 60 meters above the ground. We have a couple of new models that are just coming in. One's what's called an RTK, a real-time kinematic based Phantom drone. So we can actually get sort of centimeter level precision without the need for having ground control points on there. And then we also have an order in for a multispectral Phantom where the RGB camera has been swapped out for a multispectral camera. And we use those type of drones for doing things like coastal habitat vegetation work, kelp forest monitoring, and the like. Next drone, please. Next slide. These are a couple of our other more specialized drones that we have in our fleet. The one on the left there is the DJI Matrice 210. It's our heavy payload quad rotor drone. It's pretty big. I remember the first time we turned it on, our drone technician, Pat, and I, we kind of backed off a little bit. It was kind of like watching an animal turn on. We actually can use it to carry multiple different types of instrumentation at the same time. So this particular model can have an RGB camera attached to it at the same time as we have a multi-spec camera attached to it. And so that's what you're seeing in this setup, is that it's set up with a dual camera array. And this was actually one of our mapping trips up to the Farallones National Marine Sanctuary. This is one of the older drones that we had. Actually, this was bought by Rick Kavidek some time back. It's one of our fixed wing drones. It's the SenseFly EB. One of the advantages of fixed wing drone, it has a longer flight time on it. The quad rotors, because they have to use so much power to stay in place, they tend to burn a lot of battery life. So they have about a 30-minute flight time on them. The EB is actually get to use quite a bit for longer range missions. It's got a LiDAR system on it, so we actually use it to look at things like coastal erosion around Monterey Bay. Next slide, please. This is one of our newer drones. We really haven't had a chance to use this one much because we got it just before the pandemic. So we haven't had much of a chance to use it, though we're almost ready for it to get out in the field now. It's a fixed wing VTOL drone. You saw, I think, an example of one of these in Chris's talk. It takes off like a helicopter, and then the props rotate forward, and then it flies like an airplane. This also has an RTK system. It's also approved for operating off of boats. In fact, we'll be using these on some NOAA vessels later on the year, and it actually was passed by NOAA to be on those boats. It does have a payload bay that we can switch in, so we can put in a multi-spec system, or we can put in a camera. This one has a 42 megapixel RGB camera on it, and we tend to use this we're going to be using these for at-sea surveys in conjunction with NOAA. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to just kind of review here are just kind of a few examples of how we're now applying these to survey coastal habitats in and around California. And so one of our first big test runs was actually down on Catalina Island. And so I've got a long-term project down there that I inherited from another professor that was started in the 80s. We were actually monitoring intertidal or tide pool habitat around Catalina Island. And this is actually a bit of ecological information that sort of got lost to time. We are actually monitoring this in support of the spiny lobster fishery down south. And every time I tell people, like, what are you talking about? Don't they just live in the kelp forest? Actually, they actually switch habitats depending on the time of year. And so in the springtime, what happens, the female lobsters will actually migrate up into the intertidal, and they eat mussels that are in there. If you know the lobsters down there, they don't have claws, so they have these little mandibles, and they chip away at the shell. And once they break through the shell, they look like two big teeth. And then they take what they're called maxillipeds, which actually miniaturized claws, and they pull the mussel out of there. And so this is actually a critical foraging habitat that helps support that particular species. And so we used to do this by hand. We used to monitor this stuff by hand. And to do like a 30-meter stretch of shoreline would take us a couple hours crawling around on our hands and knees. You're looking at one of my former graduate students there, that's Taylor. She's knocking these out in 5-minute clips at a better resolution than we were getting by hand. So it's really changed the way that we're doing resource management around a pretty important fishery here in California. Next slide, please. And this just kind of gives you an example of some of the stuff that we put together. And so we use an approach called structure for motion. And what it lets us do is we can take all the photos that we're collecting and then put them together into a 3-dimensional representation, right, of the habitat that we're mapping. So these are one of our sites out on Catalina Island. And we can zoom in, you can see all the habitat that's there. We can sort of do all types of statistical analysis. It's also great for educational outreach. So we can I ship these over to colleagues in the Midwest who want to do sort of lesson plans around, the intertidal and, and marine habitats out on the coastlines there. And so we use this type of approach for a lot of different things beyond just resource management. Next slide. And the other fun thing that we do is we used to count this stuff by hand, which takes a lot of time, even if you're doing it in photos. And so we're using machine learning based approaches these days to auto-classify the habitat that we're seeing on there. So it's a remote sensing approach you can use in GIS software like ArcMap. And what it's doing, it's taking advantage of the property that if you take an image, certain parts in your image reflect light back at different wavelengths. So pink algae will reflect one wavelength, green algae another wavelength. You can train the software to pick up those differences, and then it gives you an estimate of the whole cover in there. So for example, this picture has a total number of pixels in it. Maybe it classifies half of the pixels as belonging to a certain cover of algae. We can just divide the total number of green algae pixels by the total pixels in there, and then we get an estimate of what percentage of that habitat is covered. That percentage of that area is covered by a certain habitat. And so depending on the speed of our machine, we can kind of do this in about a minute or two. Doing this by hand would take you a few hours. And so we're really sort of expediting the whole process of getting information out of these systems and then classifying it. Next slide, please. And then we're also doing work, as I mentioned, we're moving all around the state. And so we recently started a partnership with the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary, where we're actually helping them monitor kelp forests. In their case, it's bull kelp. it's actually an important habitat for different types of fishery species. It's actually a critical habitat for abalone in the past, but there's also other types of critical fishery species that use it. And with this pandemic the last year, they would normally do this with divers. They weren't allowed out on the boats with the divers. And so we came in and filled that gap for them. And so we were knocking out, 10-kilometer stretches of shoreline within the span of a day or two. And that would be really hard to do, with diving. And so I think the Farallones, we're starting to see the advantage of this. And in fact, we'll be heading back up this later in this fall, this upcoming fall, to continue this mapping project. Next slide. And you can see the resolution that we get on these images. So this is taken from a height of about 400 feet. And so we can actually zoom in, and if you know anything about bull kelp, they have little bulbs on top. They look like old bullwhips, hence the name bull kelp. You can actually zoom in and see the little knobs on top of each individual kelp that's there. So it's pretty high resolution. And so they're getting a lot of really great data out of this. Next slide, please. And then this kind of just gives you a sense of how big of an area we're mapping at one time here. So this is about a little over a kilometer, about a 1.5 kilometers or so. And there, the red circle is where our drone team is at there. But the drone knocked this out in a little under an hour in this case. So, and you're looking at about maybe 500 meters offshore in this case. So that's a pretty big area to get in that short amount of time. So it just gives you a sense of how much faster we're able to get information out of these systems using things like drones. Next slide, please. And then we've also recently moved here into Monterey Bay. And so we're helping provide some mapping support for an earthworm removal effort here in Monterey Bay. So this is partly funded by California Sea Grant, and they're funding citizen science divers, an organization called Reef Check. And what they're being funded to do is they're actually removing urchins around an area called Tankers Reef here in Monterey Bay. And they're trying to see if they do that, can they actually bring macrocystis or giant kelp back? And if you're here in Monterey Bay, you know the value of that to different types of species that are here. And so we just started this. We're actually still processing the data. It's a pretty substantial area. It actually took us a couple of days to map the whole thing in this case here. But what we're doing is we're providing baseline data to this project and the sanctuary that they can then use later on to assess the effectiveness of this urchin removal project that they're having, whether or not it's actually facilitating kelp, the return of kelp in this area. Next slide, please. So just to kind of close out here, drones, what are some of the advantages of using drones in the coastal environment? Well, it's a low cost approach for monitoring coastlines. Every time people are like, well, how much does that drone cost? Well, it's 20,000. I get the, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. But it's a one-time cost. It's like either that or I'm paying, 5 technicians, 60,000 a year, and there's a real big difference, right, in a price point. And so sometimes people just have to get past the initial investment point there. It really expands the spatial and temporal coverage that we have as well. A lot of the questions that we're interested in around changing coastal environments, we're starting to recognize that they occur across real big spaces and they're constantly changing. And so we need a technology that can keep up with those changes. And so drones are starting to show that they can do that. And the other thing, when you have these extended coverages, you can start to pick up features that you might not be able to detect with current monitoring approaches. As I mentioned, with the current thing we call quadrats and meter tapes and counting by hand, my sense of the change, it's that little 10 by 10 square meter quadrant, that I'm working within. There's a whole lot going out of there. And so the drones that you pick up what's going on in other areas. Next slide, please. And so you can learn more about our program. We're out there on the web. So I run the Marine Landscape Ecology Lab there, and that's where we host a lot of our drones. And so if you want to keep up with us, see things we're doing, we have our next big trip coming up to Hopkins on Monday, and then we'll be heading down to Catalina Island on June 22nd to pick up some more of this work here. But we try to keep up to date and kind of do stuff that's kind of new and great that's out there. So feel free to follow us and keep track of stuff that we're up to. Next slide, please. And again, thanks again. And like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have.
There is one question in chat. Can this monitoring also be done by satellite?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, in fact, people have been doing that. There's a group out of UCLA that does that. There are some challenges. In fact, we just submitted a paper with them. There are some challenges with satellites, though, as well. So satellites can pick up a lot of this. One of the challenges is you have to get satellite imagery that's not covered by clouds. That's one of the big challenges that they have. And then there's other issues around atmospheric corrections, because remember, you are taking pictures from outside the atmosphere and there's distortions that get introduced from that. But it does work, but again, there are some limitations. The other big limitation, it's the resolution on the images. So you sometimes get resolutions of about a ½ kilometer or so. I think they can get them down to like 100 square meters or so. But for some of the stuff that you have to do at smaller scales, the satellites can't do it. And so we're doing a collaborative paper with UCLA. We're looking at what happens when you integrate the drone systems with the satellites. You know, what type of information you get with that. But yeah, you can do satellites. It has been done. Like I said, there are some pros and cons to using them.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Corey. That was great. Fascinating work you're doing out there. All right. So that brings us, I believe, to the end of our program. Thank you to our presenters, Josh Metz, Monterey Bay DART, Chris Bly, Monterey Bay DART and Airspace Integration, and Corey Garza, the CSUMB School of Science. And stay updated, sign up for our monthly newsletter. We have news about companies in the area, news about events going on in the area. So it's a good way to stay caught up. And thanks to our sponsors, Cal State University Monterey Bay, Startup Monterey Bay, that's us, and the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. And next is July, Tuesday, July 13th. Our theme is going to be innovative spaces. And so we're looking for what you think are really cool spaces that have opened up in the region. And it might be a space like Dust Bowl Brewery is one of my favorite innovative spaces in the region. And I think this space that's being done over at the Monterey Conference Center for doing hybrid meetings is another very cool space. And as we're moving into opening back up again, I think it's a good time to take a look at what are the cool spaces around the area. So any suggestions you have, toss them into chat or send us an email, put up a smoke signal, however you want to get it to us. And we'll take a look at those in our July edition. Thanks again, everybody who presented, everybody who was here to watch and join in and learn. And we'll see you next month.